It's really down to you to be strong, feel inspired, feel supported, or it gets so crap that you need to put your hand up and ask. Because public female role models just, I mean, I don't know who you guys would look up to, right? Because they're so almost like non-existent.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Ladies First podcast, made completely from start to finish by all the wonderful ladies here today. Today, we are going to talk about a number of issues. We wanted to make this podcast to delve into some of the experiences and challenges that women are facing in the media industry today. So some of the topics we're going to cover are stereotyping and tokenism, equality in the workplace, and we're also going to look at some really interesting Reddit stories that we found from women who are experiencing varying things in the workplace. So first things first, I think let's go around, give everyone a little bit of an intro so you get to know everybody.
Hi, I'm Florence. I'm the production coordinator at Green Rock.
And I am Hannah, and I am the production manager.
I'm Caroline, and I'm one of the editors at Green Rock.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm the director of operations.
And hi everyone, I'm Kate. I'm the CEO of Green Rock.
And I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, so I'm Kaylee, and I'm our social creative lead here at Green Rock. So I thought I'd kick us off by kind of dropping us right in the deep end here, guys. And I wanted to talk about equality, first things first. And I guess the big question that I have with this is, do you guys think we're really there yet? Do you really think we have workplace equality at this point throughout the media industry?
No, I don't think we're there yet. 100%. I think we're privileged to work in the sector that we're in, and I know all of you will have stories from our sector, but I know all of us have branched out into different areas, even starting from the creative industry, and I think a lot of them are worse. A lot of them are diabolical, with friends, colleagues, people within my women within my network. I think things have improved, but gosh, we've still got a long way to go, and I don't think social media has helped at all.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you on some of the points that are on social media. I think it's had quite a big impact, particularly on self-image. I think one of the things that I genuinely think is quite interesting is with the rise of like Google Hangouts meetings, right? Like everyone's on them all the time now. It's become like a normal thing for everybody. And it's definitely had some very interesting implications for me in terms of my own self-image. And one of the big things in particular is, I know probably everyone has different views on this, so absolutely jump in if you have an opinion here. But for me, I always find it almost like there's a pressure to like look good on camera. And especially in my role where it's quite client facing a lot of the time, I kind of always feel like I have to kind of be on my A game, and like I don't want to come on camera if I don't like have makeup on and things like that, but you kind of have to in those roles. So it's interesting, like the kind of inner fight to be like, right, come on, I've just got to like get in there and do it. But yeah, that's been an interesting one for me.
I definitely have the idea that if you feel that you're not taken seriously on a call, if you put makeup on or you dress in a certain way, you'll feel that you should be taken more seriously, which I don't think men necessarily have in the same way at all. I think they turn up and they expect to be taken seriously and wouldn't question that they wouldn't be.
I also think being able to see yourself. So obviously I know you can make it so that you can't see the image of yourself, but when you can, you then become even more hyper aware of what you look like. And in a normal meeting or in normal life, you wouldn't have any concept of what you look like when you were speaking. But now all of a sudden, I'm aware of it and I can see how I look, and that's just brings such a different dynamic to the way that you sort of view yourself, I think.
100%. It's almost like looking in a mirror, like every time you get on the call, and like I'm not used to like doing that since before kind of, COVID and all that. So I agree, it's kind of wild how it's kind of evolved.
Do you think that has something to do with missing a positive female presence to look up to?
I think the absence of day-to-day female role models has been, I've noticed through COVID especially, and I I really feel for you guys, because pre-COVID and when I was like your ages, I was lucky enough to have some really strong female leaders, just day to day, either as my peers or as my superiors, that would just be there, either as role models, in meetings, standing by the coffee machine. And it's just those little things that made me feel supported, and that I wasn't, fighting this battle right on my own. And it's those, and I've given it some reflection, reading through your notes, Kaylee, and I just thought, Christ, that's gone for you guys, right? So unless we make time to have those one-on-ones and just those chats, right, outside of the calls, that's gone. So it's really down to you to be strong, feel inspired, feel supported, or it gets so crap that you need to put your hand up and ask. Because public female role models just, I mean, I don't know who you guys would look up to, right? Because they're so almost like non-existent for me. And I'd love to ask you guys, who is out there that inspires you, right? That can give you that support either publicly or privately.
I think recently, I mean, this is an interesting subject, because recently, obviously, there was the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and there was obviously her whole speech when she came down. And I thought that was a really interesting topic, in that she was quite emotional and she was quite open about that side of her. Whereas like we normally see, no, it's all about leadership and strong and get the job done. And she showed a different side as a woman, but still managed to get things done.
I feel like you look at the kind of like age demographic of women in their late 20s and 30s, and then I find, particularly for role models for me in the workplace, then you have a jump of women who are in their late 40s and 50s. And it's because if they decided to have a family, either can't support themselves to come back to work because of the current situation. So in comparison to my male counterparts, I'm just referencing my husband in this situation, he at work is surrounded by men of all different ages, who could be 5 years older than him or 10 years older than him, none of whom have had to have a career break and have constantly bounced from opportunity to opportunity. And I think there's a huge gap in the female workforce where you have all of these really skilled women, but they're just not necessarily working in the industry, whatever that may be. So then people coming through don't necessarily have that role model to go, oh, do you know what? I've got that person. And that's a bit of a generalization. There's definitely women that are, able to be role models, but I think there's a lot less because of that.
When I was working in the investment vertical, and I'm so embarrassed to say, a woman entrepreneur was always judged more severely than a male entrepreneur, especially if they were in their 20s, because one of the questions would be, when are they going to have kids, or when are they going to drop the ball and get married, and then things will change. And that it was that kind of unbiased discrimination that was in the back even of my head. It became like, hang on, when is this going to change? And the same criteria was never ever put on a male entrepreneur. So I think that's the issue, that creativity, taking risks, starting your own business within the investment space for a woman, especially a young woman who hasn't got married, hasn't made those kind of life choices, is going to be so much tougher on them from the outside world. Even if they're determined, it's going to be a matter of luck.
Something that's often tied into this kind of area, stereotyping of women. And I love the way you're smiling here at me. A big one that I wanted to talk about today was stereotyping, specifically in the media industry, surrounding women and the kind of roles that they're maybe more typically seen, and I know probably everyone's got a few stories. But for anyone outside the industry, would anyone kind of be able to give someone the lowdown on what some of the big stereotypes are that we see regarding women?
I think there's that the main one is the big divide between kind of more feminine kind of production roles and then versus kind of the more technical roles. And coming from a woman in a more technical role, I'm surrounded by men constantly from it, and there is a lot more masculine energy going into kind of editing and shooting and lighting, whereas I think production and admin are seen far more as women's roles.
Yeah, it's always administration, isn't it, really?
And you're sort of boxed into one or the other. I hope, and I have seen more people as I've kind of moved around, that are balancing different types of roles in and kind of making an amalgamation. Like, my happiest is when I have a producer who's like, oh, don't worry, like, I love a call sheet, or I'll look at some of the budget, and they take a proactivity in that. Whereas you'll often get those producers from an old school way of working who want you to print their pieces of paper because they don't know how to use Word.
Yeah, can you just PDF this for me?
How many times has someone said that to me?
I actually find it really interesting when I went to uni, and again, please share your experiences on this as well. When I was at uni, a lot of my lecturers who were female were actually in, again, more production, admin-y focused roles. And I remember when I finished uni, it was weird because I found myself sort of like trying to think like, oh, what's my best way into the industry? What can I do? What have I seen out there? What's a good path in? And almost naturally in my head, I was like, right, well, I've seen these like women who are like amazing at what they're doing in terms of production and stuff. Maybe I should like follow in their footsteps and kind of move along that sort of path. And I find it really interesting as to where I am now in a much more creative role, coming from that point. But it's interesting to see how these things kind of influence you from what you're seeing in the industry around you. And I'd actually love to know from you guys if you had any sort of a direction that you were thinking of going in before you joined the industry, and what kind of influenced that?
Well, I've got quite an interesting one. I was in editorial and I sat opposite Amy, who was in production, and I got on with Amy. And I think because you see another person that you connect with, that you get on with, there was a gap. I eventually then moved into production because of that. Had there been another strong woman who was a great role model in the editorial team, that could have been a totally different situation. And I think that's why probably often that happens. You see these more nurturing people and you like, oh, okay, I can see myself doing that, so I'll go into that. And these divides just slowly start to happen.
It was all my fault,
all the great, all of your skill, depending on which way you look at it.
In the creative industry and in the technology industry, because things are so fast moving, there is an opportunity for us to disturb the norm, and I don't think we can ever stop the fight. Do you know what I mean? I think as soon as we start to feel that things are slipping, and then it's kind of like, do you know what, I'm just going to accept it. That's when things will start to, reverse or regress. But I do feel like as we're pushing technology, pushing creativity, as there is innovation, as things are like fast moving, there's such a desperation for raw talent and creative thinking and a kind of uniqueness of thought. I think as long as you believe in that and you're willing to be disruptive, then there will be an opportunity.
No, that's some really sound advice, I think. Something definitely I learned quite early on in my career was it's actually really beneficial to go into an interview and just be 100% confident in who you are and what you're bringing to the table and what you can do for this company. And I almost feel like sometimes that's a bit refreshing for people, because kind of people come into the interview a lot of time, they're a little bit nervous and they're kind of like, oh gosh, I hope this goes well and all this. But I think it's kind of refreshing a lot of times to see women who are really passionate about what they're doing, really confident in what they're doing, and can really portray that in a visual presence, that people can really take up in an interview situation. And on that note, does anyone have any tips, I guess, for kind of getting into the industry and anything along those lines?
Well, my route in was quite odd because I'm mid-20s, but I've had lots of different jobs in lots of different industries. So I don't have sort of solid advice on what would be a normal route. Before Green Rock, I worked for like a broadcasting studio, and I guess that was my foot in the door. I suppose that was a job that I was qualified for because it was based around a lot of the admin side of things, unfortunately, and it was based on sort of like getting on with people, being good with people. So I suppose me actually getting that job, the television part was probably secondary to my other skills and who I am as a person. And then that just sort of, that's been my route into production, television, and I kind of haven't really looked back, to be honest. I really, really enjoy it. But yeah, no firm path on my account.
I've got some feedback for you on that. The thing that stood out with you is the fact that you're an artist. So that, and it was interesting that you didn't say that in your response, because that was what really for us, right? And I know with Amy and Hannah, they feel the same. The fact that you do this, right, as your passion, right, and as your like, that set you apart, and the fact that you wanted to talk to me about it. So it's actually the things that you don't realize that makes you different. Employees and leaders will say, actually, the fact that she's naturally creative, and you don't have to be good, right? But you're passionate, right, about something that you do, and it's your way of thinking, it's your dedication, it's your belief in yourself and your art and your creativity that kind of like sets you culturally in our fit. Does that make sense? So it's sometimes the things that you don't even put on your CV and you don't think are important are really important.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think of that as being to do with me as a person as opposed to me professionally. And I don't ever actually, you're completely right. I've never really thought of that as being a reason why I would be sort of be likely to get a job or something like that. I just think of it as something I do.
It's you. So people hire people, not schools. And you're amazing. You're an incredible young woman, and you're an amazing artist, and that's what I think good employers look for, right? It's not just your grades or your background, and of course that's important to a degree, but it's more, we're going to be working with this person, right? And they're going to be joining the team, and how are they going to like fit in, but more importantly, what are they going to add? And it's all that stuff that you can't put down on paper that needs to come out. And we saw that with you, Flo, which is, it's hard to be an artist, right? It's really hard. It's hard to do anything that's creative, or a passion that is a hobby and then becomes like a profession. And we saw that, and that kind of set you apart above and beyond your experience.
I think it comes down to that self-image thing partly again as well. Like as women, we go, okay, what does this employer want to see from me as my professional self-image? And you're sort of historically told, okay, don't bring don't bring your family life or your personal life, your emotions into mix, because that might look bad on you. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think the industry's changing in that sense, because actually sometimes you see your work colleagues more than you see your family. You're with them 8 hours a day. It's really important that you get on and hold, the same sort of values.
Also, going back to the things that we said before, I think I think this is my 35th job, perhaps, and I've made my way around. But I used to see that as a real negative, and actually, it's about seeing your strengths, because what you think is a weakness, someone else might think is a strength. So, like Flo, you could argue, oh, well, my art could be a weakness because it's like a distraction. But actually, we all see that as a massive skill, in the same way that if someone says to you, where do you want to be in 10 years, and you don't know the answer, that can be a real skill. Well, like a string to your bow. It doesn't have to be a hindrance. And I think that women give themselves a hard enough time, as do men, but like particularly women give themselves a hard enough time about figuring it all out, answering the questions, knowing the answers, bossing their career, answering big life decision questions. And actually sometimes it's about going, oh, do you know what, I really smashed today, and like I might have just done 5 things, but not belittling yourself, because other people don't belittle you as much as you do to yourself. So kind of like you said, Kaylee, walking into the room and just having the confidence to be yourself is so important. And like, look, I can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? Like, it's easier said than done, and you've got to have that. You've got to wake up feeling resilient to be able to feel like that, and every day is not going to be like that, but just remembering that.
I think it's really important to create a space where that is okay. Whereas, like, if you are having a bad day, you're like welcome to talk about it, and if you are having a great day, it's open to celebrate, and you have the space and the openness within a culture to be able to do that.
Definitely, yeah.
So I have some interesting little stories here that I found on Reddit of women who work in various different industries, but have probably had experiences that we can either relate to or have heard other people that have had similar issues with. So I'll start here. This is a big one, interesting one we've probably considered before. How to be assertive without being a bitch. So, 30-year-old woman working in the computer science industry. I have management experience as well, and a common piece of feedback I get is that I'm too nice and that I need to be more assertive or put my foot down. In the past, however, when I've tried to be more strict, I've been labelled as bitchy and difficult to work with. And this has always been anonymous feedback for this person. Any tips from my fellow professional woman on being strong and getting respect in a male-dominated industry or workplace?
I think you just need to not let it get to you. Like, men wouldn't worry about coming off as bossy, so why should you? I think that you just have to be more assertive and kind of let the criticism roll off your back.
I think it's true. I think an important point with this is if you feel that you've unnecessarily or unjustifiably been called, bitchy in a situation like this for standing up and kind of saying your opinion, I think it's quite kind of important to point out sometimes that that's not okay, and that you are being stereotyped in that regard. Obviously depends on the situation that you're in and everything along those lines. But at the same time, I don't feel like you should let someone feel like you can't give your opinion on something in an assertive way, I think this is definitely something that I've experienced because I'm very passionate. So, if I have an opinion on something, I kind of want to make sure as a woman that my voice is heard in the room. And it's a difficult balance. And you kind of have to think sometimes about how you're coming across, but also I would say don't lose confidence in how you're coming across. Be confident in what you're saying, back up what you're saying, and don't take from anyone.
I think it's a tricky one because I think imposter syndrome can come into this a lot of the time as well, where we were talking about this the other day. It's like it's also becoming a bit of like, oh, an imposter syndrome is a women's problem. It's your problem that you feel that way. When it's not, it's because of a deep rooted thing in our society historically. But I think that can play a part in sometimes like how you think you've come across. You can sometimes be like, oh my God, that I came across really harsh in that moment, or you think it's come across much worse than it has. But I think definitely having the confidence in it. But just from a personal point of view, I think sometimes if you feel really passionate or even like have a different emotion towards something, sometimes in that moment it's not the right time to make your point. It depends on the situation, absolutely, but I think taking a step away sometimes from that emotion and then thinking about what you want to say, knowing exactly what you've got to back it up with, and then making that point. But you have to follow through with the point as well. I think that shows that assertiveness of like, I didn't speak in the moment because it wasn't right, but my voice is still heard and this is what I've got to say.
I think it's difficult though, because, and this is something I've spoken to some of the girls about, being like a young woman as well within an industry that is still maybe male dominated. I'm very sort of passionate, and not outspoken is the wrong way of saying it, but I'm not afraid to say what I think in my personal life. But in the workplace, and this has been all my previous workplaces, I think it's just that bit more difficult because I can't help but sort of view myself as being sort of inferior, or like sort of lower down in the pecking order. And so, and that's maybe how I view myself, but I also think that other people view me like that. So it's this sort of like double, this double thing that makes me not respond how I would perhaps like to, because I know exactly what I think and I know exactly what I want to say, but there's something holding me back, and that's this view and perception of myself as being a young woman.
Yeah, definitely. I find myself questioning my own experience when you find people like clients are questioning your advice and your opinions far more than they would male colleagues. Like if I put through a suggestion, like at previous jobs, constantly the client would then look to my male colleague for confirmation. They would never do that when my co-worker would put forward an opinion. And I find myself going, well, actually, is it me? Is that the wrong answer? Like, am I incorrect?
Having sat the other side of the table, both sides of the table, I would say, guys, the more you allow that to happen, the more it will affect your confidence and your soul. And there'll be times when you're not listened to, and there'll be times when you feel, oh shit, why didn't they even hear me? But there'll also be times when fresh thinking and that voice flow and Caroline is actually really welcomed to the table, because everyone else is hearing the same loud voices all the time, and actually having a fresh perspective, a fresh voice, just a new view is actually really, well, it isn't actually, it's really healthy to any company dynamic or any kind of like situation. So don't be afraid of the consequences, because it won't always go right and it won't always go the way you want it to. But those small like nuggets, right, where you are listened to, where your opinions are accepted, will make a difference to yourself and to everyone, right? So I think it's just courage, right? Don't be afraid, and be prepared. Be prepared to be put down and be prepared not to be listened to, but also be prepared for the exact opposite of what you're expecting, which is actually, you've got an incredible idea that will make a difference. So yeah, you've just got to take that chance.
I think I come at this from a slightly different angle of And I do think this is only purely because I grew up acting, so I have this ability to put this game face on, and I'm never feeling confident, but I have a persona that I can pretend I am. I don't get quite the same level of imposter syndrome in the same way of like, oh, did I say something wrong? But what I'll be doing inside is thinking, everyone's judging me. No one understands what I've said because I don't have a belief that I understand the content to the same degree. I have an ability to give the gab, but I don't have a belief in my abilities that what I'm saying is necessarily correct. And I have a huge thing of particularly men who are rude. So that's why I often come into situations and I'm like a diffuser. I will throw jokes in. I will make people try and feel as comfortable as possible, because that's where I know I feel I thrive. If I feel comfortable and other people feel comfortable, I think it's more productive. So as soon as you come in and the energy's wrong, I'll either try and diffuse it, or if you feel that you can't, I'll completely back off, because I'm like, I don't want to get into a situation where someone is rude. And as soon as someone is rude, I'm just like, oh, you've lost the moral high ground now.
And also when it comes to like sensitivity, and I know there's a place for sensitivity enormously, and it can't be all the time. But I'm a very emotional and sensitive person, and I also think that's a strength. Like I don't think that's a weakness, but I know a lot of people do, and you can't respond with emotion all the time, slash kind of sometimes it feels like you can't do that any of the time, especially against men in higher positions. They wouldn't respond well to a hysterical young woman, I don't think. But I think that's my point. I don't see it as a negative thing, but I feel like it's something that you were taught to hold back, especially at work, definitely.
Yeah, totally agree.
I think it's quite difficult as well, because say you've been in a situation where someone has quite openly disrespected you in front of other members of staff. It's really difficult to then come out of that situation, especially if the person who's disrespected you is a senior male, to then feel like you can stand up and say, actually, I don't really think that was on. I don't really think that was appropriate. Because the thought's always there of like, am I going to be seen as being over emotional, or am I going to be seen as disrespecting this person? Is this going to be taken the wrong way? And it's really hard. And I think this is something that companies need to support their female employees in, of making sure that good structures are in place where women feel safe to speak up in situations like that. They feel supported in situations like that. And they know that they're going to be taken seriously and not have any sort of repercussion for saying, you know, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable right now.
I was just going to say that it comes back to having a more dynamic leadership team, doesn't it? And knowing that you've got other people in the room who, you know, are going to have different voices.
But also, I don't know about any of you, but I would feel so much better sometimes, I think. I will write you a list of all the things that I'm terrible at, and like go on for hours about things that I feel like, oh God, I can't do a budget, I can't do these things, right? All these things going on in my head. I'd love to actually hear some like senior men go, oh, I'm not very good at that. And that being okay. Because actually, we're all not good at things, but sometimes I think that we build up these things in our head where they're like, oh, well, they think they're great at everything because they never show this weakness, which isn't weakness, but I think it would make it feel like a level playing field. Like men I've worked in previous jobs, they just, well, I'm great, I'm amazing. It's like, well, you know what, are you? You're human. And I think women are too quick to sometimes go, oh, sorry, it's a silly idea. Sorry if this doesn't make sense.
Yeah. If I'm not good at something, I kind of want to be the first to like think it or say it. Do you know what I mean? As in like, I want to be like, yeah, well, I'm rubbish at this anyway, so blah, blah, blah. I don't like the thought of somebody thinking it or saying it before I've confessed, if that makes sense.
And most of the time, no one's picked up on what you've done until you point it out.
Well, exactly.
Now, just hearing you guys, I was like, God, you know, things haven't changed, but don't extinguish, right? So it's such an asset to care, you know, and it's such an asset to feel frustrated and not heard. But don't dial it down, girls. You know, you've got to feel that. I think it should be appreciated, the fact that you want a voice, but don't zip it, right? You've got to keep on talking. And if things get so bad that you're not heard, then something has to be done, you know, either internally or externally, because without these conversations, things won't change.
Well, thank you everyone so much for being here today. I think we've had a very lovely and insightful discussion, and I hope we can do this again sometime soon. If you'd like to catch up on more things Green Rock, you can catch us on TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So yeah, catch you guys again soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.